Hello and welcome to Byjus Exam Prep IAS. As part of a knowledge series, today we'll be discussing the Indus Valley Civilization, a very important topic in the larger context of ancient and even art and culture, because the IVC or the Harappan Civilization, Indus Valley Civilization, you will always find one question in the prelims also, and somehow it also comes as a mains question. So it's a very important topic in that regard. And today what we will do is we will concentrate on two things. First, we'll try to understand where it is, how was it discovered, and then the basic characteristics, because beyond that it doesn't make sense for mains. Basically, we'll try to understand the characteristics. And those are mostly known to students, but there needs to be some form of coherence in that regard. So let's first understand what do we mean by the Indus Valley Civilization, what is its extent, and how do we understand it in the larger context. So first is that the Indus Valley Civilization fully a chance discovery, because of the fact that once the East India Company was laying what we call as railway tracks in this sector, the northwestern frontier province sector, which is the India-Pakistan sector today, they were totally astonished to find some terracotta handicrafts and even terracotta figurines in that area. And it was a person called Charles Mason, who actually was an East India Company soldier, who found this civilization. So the first is it's a chance discovery. Thereafter, it will take them close to 60-70 years to figure out the extent of this empire, this civilization itself. And therefore, it will also be very, very important to understand that this chance discovery was linked with the fact that later Alexander Cunningham will be the one, an archaeologist who will become the director of the ASI, the Archaeological Survey of India. And the ASI itself will be very, very significant, because Alexander Cunningham will then first give the name Harappan Civilization, because the first site which was found was Harappa, therefore the name Harappan Civilization. But later it will be John Marshall, the second important director of the ASI, who will become the most important personality because of his theories also, but he was the one who used the word Indus Valley Civilization for the first time. So the first question which should come to your mind is, how was it found? It was found a chance discovery, and it was totally Alexander Cunningham who gave the first term, which is Harappan Civilization. Thereafter, Indus Valley Civilization for the first time used by what is called John Marshall. Now, this is the first thing which you need to understand. Second is the extent of the empire, of the civilization itself, which is that how is it distributed. So basically, pre-independence, all the sites were technically in India only. So basically, we had 646 sites, close to that, very, very small, early, mature and late Harappan sites. However, after partition, most of these sites actually went, Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Ganeriwala, all actually went to Pakistan. So thereafter, we had a proper funded, Government of India funded archaeological survey which was done in the Indian sector, and we found close to 500 sites in India also. And today there are 436 sites, 446 sites in Pakistan, and 646 sites, close to 1000 sites are there of Indus Valley Civilization. So basically it's a very, very extensive civilization in this sector itself. And when we talk about its phases, its time period, there are three time periods which are linked to it. First is early Harappan, then mature Harappan, then late Harappan. Early Harappan is 3200 to 2600. You will find different dates in different books. I am giving you the Upinder Singh's understanding and the dating from that. That is an optional level book that is mostly considered the correct one, but NCERTs will give you separate. Upinder Singh will give you separate. All dates are correct, because in ancient these 500, 600 years is not a correction. That is why I use circa. Circa means approximately. So 32 to 2600, 2600 to 1900, 1900 to 1300, and you will also find 1500 as a basic time period. So basically what we believe is that between 3200 and 1500, the Indus Valley Civilization was there. as a very important civilization in the northwestern sector, and the most important phase was the 2600 to 1900 period. The mature phase, meaning it is at its zenith, foreign trade along with the maritime trade along with all the commodities they are producing are at its highest point. So basically mature Harappan phase is considered the most important phase. Early Harappan sites are also there, late Harappan sites are also there. Basically the point is, it's a civilization which is very, very mature and very big. Its expanse is very, very big. So it was first found in 1826 by a person called Charles Mason, East India Company soldier, found the ruins of Harappa and artifacts in and around it when he was laying tracks. Then Alexander Cunningham, an archaeologist, will visit this site in mid-19th century. He will use the term Harappan civilization. On the other hand, we will have in February of 1871, Archaeological Survey of India will be formed, and Alexander Cunningham was appointed as its first Director General. And then in 1924, finally, all important basic data was presented to the public via Sir John Marshall's, who was technically director of the ASI at that point of time, who will announce to the world. So they found it in 1876 only, but they did not know the extent of the civilization itself. So it was only in 1924 that the world was told about the Indus Valley Civilization as a parallel to the Mesopotamian civilization, a great civilization in India itself. And he announced the discovery of the civilization in a London weekly called the Illustrated London Times. He was the first scholar to use the term Indus civilization. And see, I can see the question, so I know that you're writing, what about Dayaram Sahni? Dayaram Sahni is the person who will properly survey the site. I am talking about chance discovery, then the way it was told to the world. Every site, Bibi Lal, Dayaram Sahni, every site has a different archaeologist who will go dig further. That is not what I'm talking about here. Basically what I'm talking about here is that how will it be told to the world? It is only the discovery of Indus Valley Civilization is properly published in 1924 by Sir John Marshall, and then he started to give his theories of what was the origin, what was its decline. Basically, the world was stunned to see that a civilization parallel to Mesopotamian and Egyptian civilization was also in the Indian subcontinent, which in itself was a very, very big thing because it was a very mature, very sophisticated civilization, and that we will see from the characteristics. So basically what we've done till this point is, how was it discovered? Chance discovery. Who was the one who published it? Who made public that there was something called the Indus Valley Civilization? Sir John Marshall. Moreover, the point is, it's a sophisticated, very, very mature civilization. And we will now see that. First, we'll see the maps and then see what are the characteristics. What makes the Indus Valley Civilization as what we call as the first urbanization in India. Because this was the first urban civilization. We have cities, we have towns, we have a very sophisticated understanding of internal, external trade. We have some form of writing which we have not deciphered. Over and above that, a society which was totally stratified and different type of roles were given. A society which had a lot of craft specialization. So it's a first urbanization phase. First urbanization is, second urbanization is 6th century BCE, Buddhism, Jainism. Basically, first urbanization. Why is it that? We'll try to understand that through the characteristics. The features of Indus Valley are so that we technically don't even have those features today in modern cities. And that is the beauty of how they were planning cities. Town planning has the first example in India in the Indus Valley Civilization. So, this is the map from the NCERT. And I also have the map from Upinder Singh's book. Now, basic point is, I've given you both these maps because there's a difference in the number of sites. There is a lot more in Upinder Singh's map. On the other hand, in NCERT, there is basic ones. Now, what I want from you is that you will obviously learn all the NCERT sites because they are given in the NCERT. So, basically, Rakhigadi, very important site. Then you have Kalibangan, very important. Banavali, very important. Agriculture site, Rakhigadi and Banavali, both agricultural sites. Then Kalibangan, fire altars, very, very important. Then you have Kotadizhi, it's an early Harappan and late Harappan site also. Mondadaro, We have then Dholavira, now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Lothal as the dockyard. Basically, they have given the basic ones from Surkotla, which would be the westernmost, to Manda, which would be the northernmost. Basically, they've given the basic sites. Basic sites, Mohenjo-daro, Amri, Balakot, Chanudaro, Harappa. So you can see Harappa is quite far away from Indus Valley, from Mohenjo-daro site itself, but there was a very good trade network. All the sites were internally connected. This is the basic, these are basic sites, which you need to know obviously because they are mentioned in the NCERT. Now comes the more advanced understanding because there are much more sites. For example, even just in the Gujarat sector, we have a whole network of sites. Rojdi, Padri came in the exam. Somnath, the old site. Then you have Malwan. Then you have a whole network of sites in this sector, which the NCERT is technically not telling you. But the fact was that throughout this whole sector, there is a very, 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 very mature form of civilization there. Then you have again here a full, Ganeriwala was a very big site in that regard, very close to Kalibangan in that regard. And then Harappa, how is it was linked to Ropad. Then you have Alamgirpur, Rakhigadi, Manpur. The point is that I've given you both these maps because I want to show you a difference. The difference is that this is the sites which you need to remember irrespective of anything because it's a UPSC and NCERT map. NCERT maps can never be ignored. On the other hand, just to give you an additional understanding that there is much more to this story and close to 1,000 sites. That is why students ask me, do we need to learn Harappan sites? There are 1,000 sites. There's no way you can learn it. The fact is you will have to learn the basic ones and have a spatial understanding. If you go through this map from time to time, maybe once a week or twice a week, you will automatically start to remember the names and that will help you in the exam, specifically in the prelims. So basically, these are the two maps which you need to remember and I hope that you are doing that and you are looking at NCERT maps very, very closely. Now comes characteristics. Characteristics you will find everywhere, but there needs to be a way you need to present it into the exam. First and foremost is Harappan sites are very advanced in the way they were planned. Basically, we have what we call as town planning at a very advanced level. Now, basically, the first characteristic of the Harappan sites, which is more or less there in all urban cities, is the concept of the division of what we call as lower town and upper town, or what we call as citadel. Basically, the lower town was the residential area where everybody used to stay. On the other hand, all administrative buildings and public buildings were actually in the citadel. So basically, the citadel, this figure again out of Upinder Singh, the basic point is the citadel itself housed Great Bath, Granary, College of Priests, Pillared Hall, fortifications. Basically, this was like the administrative zone. On the other hand, the lower town itself is important because they tried to create a division between what we call as public and residential. They made sure that administrative buildings were separate to the lower town or to the residential areas. This is a very, very sophisticated understanding of how civilizations or how basic sites are planned, because what we see in the West, in Western civilizations, is that they will have the public area in the core and then the whole city around it. This is also called a radial pattern. Radial pattern. Basically, in France or in Britain, you will see this type of an understanding that the public buildings will be at the city center in the middle, and then you will have the cities going out in a radial pattern, which is a circular pattern. However, the way the Harappans planned it was very, very sophisticated, because they made sure that they divided the two zones and then went for grid pattern, which are going to come about. Basically, the first characteristic is the concept of citadel and lower town. Citadel was also at some places at a height, which is that there was some, that was called upper and lower because they used to put it on a mount, and technically the residential area used to be at the lower areas. On the other hand, the upper areas used to be the public buildings. So the public buildings could overlook the whole residential areas. This is again a very, very beautiful way of planning a city. So the first point is the division of administrative and residential areas, and the basic point is upper and lower in itself shows division of space. Now add to it all Harappan sites, more or less with some 2-3 exceptions, have what we call as a grid pattern. Basically, roads used to run from north to south and then from east to west. And this meant that all buildings used to be in these areas and these roads used to be cutting at right angles. This is again a very, very sophisticated, they don't have scale, they don't have compass, they understand what a 90 degree is, and that 90 degree they made sure that all roads met at 90 degrees, making numerous crossings. Basically, this made sure that the whole civilization, the whole city itself was actually then always around a road, and in a way very, very well planned and connected to each part of the city itself. So if you look at the way this road is going and the way this road is going, and again this road, the basic point is their basic plan was cutting everything at 90 degree. So the streets and the houses of Harappan cities were laid on a grid pattern oriented north to south, east to west. This is again a very, very sophisticated understanding of town planning. Till today we don't have such sophisticated cities. In west, in France and all, you will see what are called radial cities. Radial cities are concentric circles. On the other hand, you have grid pattern cities, and specifically the first time in India in the Indus Valley Civilization. Now along with this, another important feature was that whilst they have grid pattern, they also made drainage and water harvesting systems mandatory along these roads. Basically, water harvesting was there in each and every house. Over and above that, fresh water and used water, which is called grey water and fresh water, were always separated. So on the same road, for example, on the same road, what they used to do was that on one side they used to make the water supply and they used to make sure that it was more or less clean. On the other hand, they had the drains, and the drains were always covered so that they could not spread disease. So basically, even today when our different organizations make roads, they forget that they had laid the sewage pipeline or the electrical lines or the water supply later, so the same road is always dug up 4 to 5 times. The basic point is when they were making roads, they were very conscious of the fact that sewage and water, which is grey water means used water, and fresh water used to never intermix with each other. This is again a very, very sophisticated. In parts of Delhi, in parts of a lot of metropolitan cities, till today we don't have drainage. We still today don't have sewage lines. We today till don't have what are called water supply, meaning we developed cities, but we didn't develop the basic necessities. But they made sure everything was covered in that regard. So the basic point which you need to understand is first upper, lower, then grid pattern, then well laid out streets, side lanes associated with efficient and well planned drainage system. Basically, every road had a drainage system, every house had a way to make sure that water was discarded, water was going into the drains, and no form of, because it's a semi-arid area today, but it was a little bit greener before this, but basically no water should be wasted, so water harvesting systems are also there. So these are the first 3 main sources. Then we have sewage chutes and pipes were separated from drains from collecting rainwater. So they made sure that fresh water and rainwater does not mix or with the sewage. And today what we see is most of the rainwater goes into the sewage pipelines and thereby wasted technically. So basically the first rainwater harvesting systems were developed by the Indus Valley people, and they're not learning it from somebody. They are actually a very sophisticated understanding of town planning. It's all indigenous. They didn't copy anybody. It was their way of. We technically don't know what the political setup was, but whatever political setup they had were very clear about two things: standardization and planning. All cities are planned, and everywhere you have standardization. Standardization, I'll come to that. The Harappans made elaborate arrangements for water for drinking and bathing. Great bath itself, ritual bathing was very important for them. Over and above that, what we see is what is called standardization. All across the Indus Valley Civilization, be it as big a site as Ganeriwala or Harappa or Mohenjo-daro, or as small a site as Rakhigadi or Banavali or what are called agricultural sites, basically all had the same ratio of bricks. When you have a brick which is going to be used for houses, it will be 7 centimeters by 14 centimeters by 28 centimeters. And if it's a wall for the city walls, it will be 10:10, 20 and 40 centimeters. What you can see is that in both 1:2:4 ratio is actually used. Basically, the striking feature is that be it anywhere in the civilization, be it in the Indian sector or the Pakistan sector, all have the same standardization. This is why we know that there was a central authority which was giving some form of decrees, because this form of standardization can only come in a mature civilization with political setup. So basically this 1:2:4 ratio, which is used for city walls also and for the houses also, is again a very important and striking feature of the Indus Valley Civilization in that regard, because that totally changes the way we understand the whole civilization. Further, people lived in houses which were in different sizes, mostly consisted of rooms arranged around a central courtyard. So the concept of having a angan, which we call, so the concept of a central courtyard and then rooms arranged around that central courtyard. Till today, though we have now started to change that, we now have more open space in the front and the back, which is much more western. The concept of the angan, which was always there in old buildings and old towns and even old buildings till today, was actually picked up from Harappan Civilization. Harappan Civilization, you will always have an open space in between rather than in the front or the back. And more than that, what we see further is that they were making sure that the rooms or the house door never opened up into the main streets. There were side lanes, so they always made sure that the house would open into the side lane, not into the main street, thereby giving privacy and making sure that there is always some form of space division in which you can't see inside the house from the main road itself, which is doorways and windows generally face the side lanes and rarely opened into main streets. So if you look at the basic concept, when we talk about Harappa, or what we call as any site or the Indus Valley Civilization itself, what we see is a very beautiful form of standardization and very beautiful form of what we call as planning. So we've understood the sites, we've understood its discovery. Just to summarize, remember three things: lower town, upper town, upper, lower, this is the first, citadel and lower town, administrative, residential, then concept of grid pattern, then along the grid pattern, second, then third is drainage. Along with drainage we also have sewage. Along with that, rain water harvesting. Then we have an astonishing level of standardization in bricks, 1:2:4, be it 7, 14, 28 or 10, 20, 40. The point was, the bricks will always be in the same ratio. Over and above that, what we see is the planning was such that always the doors used to open into the side lanes, never outside. And over and above that, these are the basic generic concepts. For example, in Mohenjo-daro you have great bath granary. In Harappa you have granary. In Lothal you have the dockyard. In Dholavira you have water harvesting and water storage system, step wells. Each site has its own peculiarity, but what makes them one civilization are these basic features which we've already discussed. So basically what you need to understand is Indus Valley Civilization is considered one of the most important civilizations in India. It was a contemporary to the Mesopotamian and Egyptian civilization, which in turn makes it very, very important. Different reasons for decline, but what you need to understand very, very clearly is that the IVC is the first urbanization, changes the way we understand the Indian subcontinent itself. The British always argued that we were barbarians, this and that, but they were the ones who actually discovered one of the most advanced civilization in the world at that point of time. And till today, UPSC asks 1 or 2 questions out of IVC because of the importance itself. And Dhauravira we saw in 2021 as a very easy question which came through UNESCO World Heritage Site, and the first Harappan site actually to be accepted, and we've already done a session on Dhauravira previously last month. So I hope now this is more or less clear and complete in your mind. So Indus Valley Civilization should not be a problem now. So let's now look at the question. As I said, Dayaram Sani was not the founder but the archaeologist who was involved, along with the later Alexander Cunningham and John Marshall. Okay. Urban planning was not learned. It was something indigenous. It was something inherent to the Harappan people. They always used to make sure everything was standardized. That was their way of civilization itself. Which is the sufficient source to cover ancient medieval India? I would say NCRTs are the must, and over and above that you need to read R.S. Sharma and Satish Chandra. But remember, don't go for the old NCRTs because R.S. Sharma and Satish Chandra is old NCRT only. New NCRTs, class 6th, 7th and class 12th, part 1, part 2 is ancient and medieval, quite important in that regard. Along with that, R.S. Sharma, Satish Chandra is a very comprehensive enough source for you itself. Okay. The trade relations, I can have a separate session for that, but basically the trade relations were internal, external both. Internally, all the sites were providing some form of raw material to each other, and externally they were connected to the Mesopotamian civilization in the modern day Iraq-Iran sector, and they also have Egypt as one node and Oman as the other. So they have both bullock cart, land-based and maritime-based trade, but that is again, there are a lot of different routes. The basic point is very sophisticated internal external trade. Okay. Southernmost, see, northernmost 2 sites you will see. One is Manda and some will say Shotugai. Shotugai technically is in Afghanistan, modern day Afghanistan. It's a lapis lazuli site. Basic understanding is Manda is actually considered a proper northern site. Other than that, southernmost you will find Daimabad also. You will find other sites, but we mostly believe Daimabad. So northernmost and southernmost, what is standard in NCRT, I am telling you, Manda and Daimabad. Technically, technology is not needed for building cities. What you need is planning. This level of advancement was based on basic technology itself, but it's about planning. We have all the technology, but we don't plan our cities well. So it's not about technological aspect, it's about cognitive capacity. It's about how you conceive a city. So they had a very sophisticated understanding of how they used to place their cities. It's not about how they use the technology. Maybe advanced technology was not used. It is an astonishment in itself, how they used to manipulate nature itself. But the point is, it's about how you conceive a city. The way they planned the city itself was so advanced that with basic technology also they were able to make whatever they had and whatever the basic characteristics are in that regard. No, please never say that did Indus Valley Civilization originate from Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia is a separate civilization. Indus Valley is a separate civilization. Only trade connections. Mesopotamia, if Indus Valley Civilization was an extension of Mesopotamia, then the same language would be there, cuneiform. But that is technically not there. More than that, IVC has very distinct characteristics, much sophisticated trade. Mesopotamia is in itself also one of the greatest civilizations in the world. We have deciphered the proto-cuneiform, which is their text, which is their script and their language. That is why we know more about the Mesopotamians. But the basic point is both are separate, but 2 great civilizations in that regard, both Indus Valley and Mesopotamia. So it's not that they are ever connected. Okay. Perfect. So the basic point is, before I end the session, which I've taken most of the questions, the point is, remember that at the end of the day, IVC, both ancient and art and culture, you will find a question. Ancient, it will be about what is the site, what is the living standards. You can have basic MCQ questions. In art and culture, they can ask you the characteristics and technically the archaeological features. And ironically, the archaeological features are, or what are called the architectural features, are its basic salient features also. So if you learn the salient features, you automatically learn the architectural features of the Indus Valley Civilization. So with this, I would like to end this session. Thank you so much for this week. This is the last session for history. Next week, we'll talk about a little bit about Buddhism on Monday, and thereafter the last history session, which will be on what we call as American Revolution, world history. So we'll try to talk about the next two planned as of right now is American Revolution, and the other one is Buddhism. So we'll try to understand these two. If not, we will also try to include another one, which is roulette. So we are right now contemplating between roulette, and I would like you to comment in the comment section. Would you like roulette or would you like Buddhism? American Revolution is already planned. So we'll talk about roulette and Jallianwala Bagh, or do you want Buddhism? Let's take a poll in the comment section. And as I always say, if you're liking these sessions, if it's contributing in any way, do please like, share and subscribe to our channel, and share these sessions as much as possible so that people get to know that something like this is happening on our platform. Thank you so much. I will see you next week with first the American Revolution and thereafter whatever you decide. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.